Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're going over a unofficial dev server Datamine from the main man Mike 10D. Now the reason I'm wearing the hat is because it's cold in my house. The reason I have the glasses on is because my head is banging. So let's go through it. The first one is the fact, and now this is the Datamine for the second dev server, so this is the stuff that you're generally going to miss, or just the differences compared to what is actually said in the preliminary notes. So the first one is AH1G and the MI4AV now get two spawns in AB and RB. So I'm guessing you won't have to be able to, or you won't have to use a backup in order to use the spawn. Now understand that they were testing a new system in the War Thunder dev server, and I believe it was just so people could get their hands on the helicopters. I'm not sure if it's going to come to the main game or not. I highly doubt it that it will come to the main game, but it was basically a system where you could spawn in a helicopter first, or spawn in whatever you wanted first, just so you could, get used to it. On top of this, the AH-1Z gets 16 tows as weapon load, so it gets 16 missiles which are able to pen 900 millimeters. This keeps it in line with the Mi-35M, I believe it is, or if I got that wrong, it's the Soviet high-tier helicopter, the 1001. That had 16 ATGMs on it, and now the AH-1Z does, so I'm guessing the reason to do that is just to balance it out, and if it's historically accurate, then go ahead. I know a lot of people have been talking about different weapon loadouts that the AH-1Z could get. Hellfires have been mentioned a lot, and I understand people will want them. Maybe it's something that could be added to these helicopters to make them more viable, but right now, I think just making sure that each side has some kind of balanced loadouts may be the way to go. So they're trying it out, and then later on, once helicopters have been sorted, with their physics and their place in the game, then we can start expanding into interesting areas. There's also the new game modes. This is Helicopter Arcade Battles, Helicopter Realistic, and Helicopter Simulator. These, of course, were the PvP game modes, where it could be helicopters on helicopters. They said that in a Q&A, I believe, talking about the helicopters from Gamescom, that if helicopters saw a decent, spike in people wanting to play them, or I believe they called it something like, if there was a lot of interest in helicopters, then they would add in helicopter versus helicopter modes. I personally think that this is where helicopters are going to be really fun, and also the PvE game modes that they've added in for helicopters. Now, I understand on the second dev server they weren't exactly, let's call it polished. There were a few issues with them, and I believe that's probably why the dev server was closed early. But if we get a third dev server, I'll make sure to check them out for you. And the video footage that I saw of them, it made it look compelling. It made it look interesting, and that's what we want. We want a situation where helicopters are fun to use. I still struggle to see in ground realistic their use, but the thing is they are slowly but surely knocking down the BRs of specific helicopters, so maybe they will find a place in the game. I really, really hope they do. A lot of people seem to think I'm against helicopters. No, that's not the case at all. I'm not against anything in this game. What I want is everything to have some kind of place in the game, and if we can do it through game mechanics, we should do. And therefore, that's what I'm looking for in helicopters. I'm looking for the game mechanics which make them viable. And so far, the ones I've found in ground forces, which is where they're supposed to be used the most, is ATGMs. So hopefully, from there, they can be useful. So the T-64B and T-80 armor has been redone, and obviously Mike will have had a look on the dev server if it was a buff or a nerf. I personally didn't see the difference between the T-80, T-64B and the old ones. It's probably how many plates are in it. That's what they were screwing with the T-64B back in the day, but we're going to have to see on the third dev server or live the actual changes. Now, the interesting one, the T140 105mm T182E1 shot was nerfed, so its penetration at 0, 500 and 1000 was reduced by around about 30 across the board. Now, if you don't know what this round is, this is the new round for the T54E1, the American 8.0 Premium, the big, medium auto loader, and the round in question is this one. It is the AP round that you see here. So these are the old statistics on the first dev server. This is from my video that I did on it. And with that said, it's the way I see it is the T182E1 should be the round that you use as the standard, and then the heat FS if you need to pen something. Now with the changes, it's hard to see. Let's have a look at the Sabo. So you see the statistics for the AP, and let's see if I scroll down. Hopefully I do. There we go. So the Sabo round is 318, 317, 310. So pretty much it has what the AP round used to have, and obviously at angles of 30 degrees it will be better. So if the AP round is not able to penetrate the weak spots of the majority of stuff that you're fighting, let's say you come up against a lot of heavier tanks, but even if you do, like the mouse, you should easily go through. The only stuff you may struggle with is things like the IS-4, the T-10 and the IS-7, and maybe the Conqueror turret. But for me, that is what the heat FS is for. The AP round, me taking, like if I have the T54E1, I take the M103 setup. So I take the AP round, and I also take the heat FS. The reason to take the AP round is out of the three, it's the one that will do the most damage. The Sabo round may pen a bit more, and also be easier to shoot because of its muzzle velocity. But the issue is, once it penetrates, it's going to do less damage. And that's because of its projectile mass. So that's also because of the way that the ballistic mechanics of Sabo are different to AP in the game. You've got to remember, when the French were released, there was a big buff to AP. And over time, Sabo has got slightly better, but it's still not on the same level as the AP is. So with that said, taking the AP as the standard round is the one which is going to do the most damage. If you need that extra penetration, then you switch to heat FS. That is the way I see it, because if we go to the heat FS, which hopefully I do pretty soon here, come on baby, you know you can do it. No! Okay, we're good. So you can see at 0 degrees, the heat FS pens 380, and at 30 degrees it pens 329, so exactly the same, and at 60 degrees even more. So more than the Sabo round. It's as simple as that. So if you need to penetrate a target, the heat FS is what you go for. See it as the APCR round if you want, or the APFSDS. But the AP round is the one which is going to do the most damage. So you load the AP first, because it's 16 kilos of projectile mass, and it's going to put a big hole in whatever it hits. But if you need that extra penetration that you get from the heat FS, you'll do a little bit less damage, but you'll actually be able to do damage. Whereas Sabo, I don't see the use in it. Maybe I'm missing something. It's very odd that it's more expensive than the heat FS. If there is something I'm missing, please let me know. But it just seems very, very odd that a round which is going to do the least amount of damage, it's the smallest projectile mass, it has a great muzzle velocity, so it's going to be great at sniping, but the actual, the penetration at distance is worse than the heat FS round, which is a third of its price. So there must be something I'm missing here. There must be something I'm missing, because over, ranges of 1.5 kilometers, I don't struggle with a round which has 1,128 meters per second, especially since the T54E1 is going to have a rangefinder. So there has to be something I'm missing. I'm guessing what's going to happen is they're going to switch those two Silver Lions costs. One thing that we haven't seen a lot of with the dev server, and also other stuff that people have been complaining about, some of the repair costs are completely outlandish. Like the M1IP one being at 17 grand when you compare it to the Leopard 2A4 and the Type 90, which are much more in the single digits and the low single digits when it comes to the thousands. And the same with some of the rounds. Some of the rounds are crazy expensive, even though you would never use them. So I'm just trying to work out, why I would use the T279. But just understand that the AP round, which for me is still going to be the stock round even after this nerf, I still think you run the AP and the Heat FS, but understand that it's lost about 30 millimeters of penetration. So aiming for weak spots, you're going to have to do even better. The FV510, which is the Warrior, it's now after the Conqueror, but it does not require the Conqueror, so it won't be linked in the tree, but that's where it will be sat in the tree. Its BR has also gone down to 8.0 now from 8.3. I think this is a positive change. The big... when I look at the FV510, I'm comparing it to the other machines that we're getting and the machines that are already in game. So if we look at light tanks, you have an 8.0 Object 906, right? Then you have a 7.7 BMP2. Then you have a 7.3 BMP1. So we'll look at the BMP2 and the Object 906. And then you have maybe the Bradley coming in, but we won't talk about that since obviously it's not in yet. And then you've also got the TAM. So the TAM has a massively superior gun to the Warrior. So does the 906. Their speed is also better than the Warrior. The one place where the Warrior is better than both of these machines is the fact that it has an ATGM. The fact that its gun can be used in a sense, but not a great one. But, well, let's just say the fact that it has an ATGM is something that's better. Compared to the others, even though you are limited with the amount of rounds that you have for the thing. But the major difference between some of the other light tanks we've seen, such as the BMP2, Object 906, TAM, and all the others, is the Warrior actually has armor. It doesn't have a lot of armor, but it has enough armor to not get hull broken. And with this, we see a machine which is going to be not vulnerable to aircraft fire. One of the problems with the BMPs and the TAM is, the TAM has it a little bit better, but definitely the BMPs and the 906 is, they can get penned by 50 cals through the top. Now, the Warrior, that's never going to happen. It has too much armor on it. Even the 25 millimeters on the turret, it's going to be very hard to pen for aircraft. So, with that said, that is its advantage. It's a little bit of survivability. Now, does this mean it's on equal parlance to a 906, which has an insane reload? It has a stabilized gun, it's quick, it has scouting, it is able to one-shot you, and you definitely can't one-shot it? Well, we're going to have to see. The Warrior, for me, should be a bit lower in BR, just because of the fact that it has the pom-pom gun, and it isn't stabilized, so you're not going to be using it that much. And if you want an anti-air machine, well, you just take the BMP2, or the Chieftain Marksman, or the Falcon, if you're talking about something British. So, with that all said, I think the Warrior's in a better position, but it still needs to be a bit lowered if we compare it to other nations' light vehicles. Something that somebody brought up in a comment and also DM'd me on Discord for. I apologize for forgetting your name, but it was heavily voted, and somebody said that you should make it a foreign person. I completely agree. The Warrior, in its sense, does have a place in the game because it has the scouting ability, but because of things like the Warrior and also other APCs/IFVs that we are going to either get into the game or already have in game, why not give them another feature? Why not give them the ability to be able to replenish other vehicles' crews? Why not make it so you know how you have repairs, how you are able to repair, or assist in repairing people who are, getting repaired around the battlefield? Why not make it so a machine like a Warrior is able to go around the battlefield and give crew to existing vehicles which are maybe down a crew? This could work in a great squad sense. It could work in arcade, realistic, and simulator. It could mean that you get more than one crew back, because obviously the Warrior carries more than one person. So with this all said, it gives an extra idea towards the Warrior being viable. And for me, as somebody who really enjoys light tanks and enjoys the idea of light tanks, it would be really nice to have them have another unique thing in the game, making them really cool. The next thing is that Tier 6 aircraft stuff seems to just be helicopters. As we talked about in another dev server Datamine, there was this idea of Tier 6 aircraft floated about. I personally thought that they were just going to do what they did with tanks, where they add in a bunch of rank 5 tanks and then they just move them up to rank 6. That's what they did with the MBT-70, KPZ-70, and also the T-64A. And then they moved a bunch of stuff up, such as a bunch of the AT-GEM stuff. So, with that said, for me, I thought they were just going to do that with jets. You know, just move up like the Canada Air, the F2, the Hunter, you know, stuff like that. Make that rank 6. But it seems to be just be for helicopters. And this makes sense as well. So we have early 2000s or even mid-2000s helicopters now. If we're going to compare them to rank 5s that we have from the 50s and 60s, doesn't really make a lot of sense. So just from an era point of view, having a rank 6 for helicopters with these 1990s, 2000s helicopters, it makes sense to me. It really does. So that would be cool to have. And I'm mainly talking about the AH-1Z here and the Mi-35M. I'm pretty sure it's the 35M. If I'm getting that wrong, I apologize. The next one is the new gun. So we have a 3-inch Naval AA Mark V, 4.5-inch QF Mark IV, 4-inch QF Mark, 23, and then the Mark IV depth charge. All of these are British guns, which is why the Royal Navy looks like it's just around the corner. Something I do want to mention is on one of the other dev server data mines that Mike 10D did, there was a mention of a Vietnam ground map. Now, I think that would be really cool, but just remember, we got the Italy map, or at least the assets for the Italy map and the name for the Italy map. It was called Italy Village, I believe, about half a year before the Italy map got released. So a lot of people are talking about how it would be cool to have an Italian ground forces map in, update 1.81. I highly doubt we're going to get a Vietnam ground forces map in update 1.81, but in 1.83 or 1.85, I think it's much more likely and even a definite, so look forward to that as we go on. Anyway, that is it for the War Thunder dev server data mine. I hope you all have a lovely day, and I'll see you next time.